Welcome to the Hardwood Hustle, powered by PGC Basketball. We believe in the value of a coach. We're here to educate, empower, and encourage you to lead like never before. This week, we're joined by Coach Corey Lowery, who has over 22 years of coaching experience and has received Coach of the Year honors 9 times. Most recently, he was the head coach at Lincoln University and now is an assistant coach at Seton Hall. In this episode, Coach Lowery shares what he's learned about building a great program, as well as some big picture takeaways on player development and systems and strategies. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Hardwood Hustle, and TJ and Sam here today, and we've got a special guest, Coach Corey Lowery, and Corey is assistant at Seton Hall. And Corey, I think let's start off here. You know, you've got a lot of head coaching experience. You've been an assistant, and let's talk about when you're building a program. You guys are laying the foundation right now, and what's the order of operation, the foundational pieces that y'all are doing right now to build a strong and long-standing program?
I think that the word that comes across, and you hear it all the time, is the word culture. You know, whenever you're taking over a new program, the first thing that you really have to do is identify, you know, what you want your program to look like. What are the daily operations of how your players are supposed to carry themselves? You know, what is the work ethic that you're trying to instill? What is our philosophy? So, you know, that culture is a big word, because you have to remember you're undoing some of the things that the previous, you know, that your predecessor had, that you're taking over for. So their cultural ideas and their philosophies might be somewhat different, you know. So right away you have to establish who you are, what's your brand, what you're going to look like, and how are we going to operate on a daily basis.
And Corey, what do you do, you know, like with players? The previous regime is in there. They have these things. You have your new ideas. You're trying to unbuild and build new habits and new standards for your program. What does that process look like with the players? What hurdles do you face in that process? And what are some ways coaches can go about getting buy-in with the new process, the new regime, the new ideas?
Right. Well, first off, whenever you're trying to establish culture, you can't fake it, because the players are going to see that right away. They know who you are. They've done their research on you. So they're going to have some ideas right away. So the communication key is very key with them. Talk honestly, be as transparent as possible, and explain exactly what it is that you're expecting. Don't make them guess about anything. But it's ongoing dialogues. So the things that you talk about, now the test comes, because do you mean what you say? Every player is going to test to see if you mean what you say. So if there's something in terms of, you know, on the defensive end, are you communicating it? Are you able to teach it? You know, it's one thing to tell, but can you teach it? So we're in a phase that we're doing a lot of teaching, and not just expecting them to get it right away, but expecting us, when we go into practice, that we have to teach it. We have to make sure that they understand it. Are you presenting yourself where the communication, they're feeling comfortable to communicate to you as well? So you know what, you're really trying to be very inviting, very open to hearing their voice, and being able to ask those questions. So you make sure that you teach it. Now, once they get it, once they understand it, now you're holding them to a standard. This is the level of expectation. You understand it now. It's not about it. It's not any confusion. You understand it. This is the level of expectation that we have for you in order to execute it now.
And Corey, we have a lot of coaches listening right now that are similar. They're taking over a program, a high school, a college, and unless they're an assistant that got bumped up and there's previous relationships, you're coming in with players that were either recruited by, like TJ said, another staff, or you're inheriting them. And so what happens when you see some resistance early on, and maybe the trust, for whatever reason, maybe it's trust, maybe they're not buying into what you're trying to sell them. What do you do as a coach, or what are y'all doing as a coach when you might have some initial resistance? Right.
You got to stay consistent. You know, at the end of the day, who are you as a coach? You know, and I said to the players, you know, all the time, there's 1,000 ways that you can win, but this is our way that we're going to choose to win. And you have to buy into that. And we're going to be consistent with that message. Now, you also have to be understanding that not everyone is going to buy in. You know, that's just the nature of how this business is today, you know. But the main thing is that there's a respect culture that's there. Even guys that aren't buying in, do we keep the environment respectful? You know, do we keep it professional? You know, and then sometimes, you know, it takes a little bit longer for guys to buy in, and they buy in. Some guys buy in quicker and some guys don't. And then you make decisions based off of that. But as a coach, as a head coach, as someone that's running your business per se, because really every head coach is a CEO of that, you have to be comfortable with the direction that you're going in. And you have to be very confident that this has worked for me. This is what's going to continue to work. Whatever adjustments that you have to make, you're able to make those adjustments. But the overall vision of your culture, you have to stay consistent with that. The big problem comes in when you start flip-flopping and then you're trying to make everybody happy. You're not going to make everybody happy. And you have to be accepting of that, and you have to understand that. But just because you're not making everyone happy, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. And I think that as time goes on, when those players see successes, you know, little small successes, they start to buy in periodically. And I think that when you have a culture like that, the majority of them will, you know, but be accepting of the fact that some won't. And it's okay.
Corey, what is the message that y'all are preaching, and why did you choose that message? I mean, when you think about the program and what you're trying to instill, how did you land in the place y'all did as a staff, and where did you land as a staff?
Well, when you talk about Seton Hall, how I got there, I think it was just that the message that Coach Holloway has is he wants guys that work just as hard as him. And that's always been my mindset as well. Whatever program that I was running, whether it was, you know, Lincoln, whether it was Essex or, you know, Middlesex or the high school level, I want guys that work hard. You know, I want guys that work just as hard or even harder as me. I want guys that have a hunger to learn and to improve and get better and not be stagnant. Also a culture where communication is invited and open. You know, as a head coach, you want to surround yourself with people that not only inspire you, but help you grow and help you get better. You know, you want to cover up whatever weaknesses, you know, as a head coach that I may have. I'm looking for someone that may be stronger in that capacity to help the overall program. And that's from top to bottom. That's with dealing with your administrators as well, dealing with your staff, dealing with your players, dealing with your support staff. Everyone has something to gain. Everyone has something to give to help the program be successful. And when the program is successful, everyone that touches that program is part of that success, and everyone can benefit from. So, I mean, that's the message as a head coach that you have to have, that I have, and why I think it was easy for me to make that transition to going back to being an assistant, because I know that Coach Holloway has that same mentality as well.
That's good. So once you essentially, these are my words, but you establish the standard, you're going to communicate the standard. And then I think you mentioned this earlier, which is accountability. Mm-hmm. And this is like, we talk a lot about the science and the art of coaching. And there's a lot of art to leadership. Absolutely. Like, you know, how you lead is different than how I lead, and how we relate to players. They all come from different backgrounds. But I think often, like the good or the great or the special coaches, there is a level of accountability that maybe doesn't exist on a consistent basis with some of your more average and not consistent programs. So This is a loaded question, Corey, but how do you guys, and how have you had success? Because you've had a lot of success as a head coach in instilling accountability, and then essentially or over time passing that on to players where there's player-to-player accountability. And I don't know that happens like in October or in year one. So that's a loaded question. Just talk to us about accountability and maybe how it's passed on over time to players.
Right. So with accountability, whenever you're talking about holding people accountable, you're going to have to be comfortable with dealing with confrontation. And confrontation is not always a negative thing. It's just confronting the situation and not letting things pass. I had a saying all the time: be uncomfortable being uncomfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. So what that just means is if I see something that is out of line in our program, I'm going to confront that issue immediately. You also have to instill that in your players. If you see someone that is not working as hard as you, why are you accepting that? That's just something that's just not acceptable in our program. So we have the standard of working hard. We have the standard of being accountable. And that's for everyone in the program. That's for your assistant coaches as well. That's for your staff members as well. Your athletic director, your athletic administrators. That's holding everybody accountable. And it's more importantly, it's holding yourself accountable, especially as a head coach, to deal with these situations. As a head coach, sometimes it's very lonely. It's very lonely. You're the head coach. You have your assistant coaches together that normally bond together. You have your support staff. You have your players. When you're that head coach, you're responsible for serving them. And sometimes when you're serving those people, you have to confront the issues that that they need to improve on. So if you're comfortable being uncomfortable, that standard of accountability is not something that's too hard to hold on to. If you're someone that is a people pleaser and wants to make sure that everything is nice and fluffy, this is probably not the business for you, because there's a lot of moving parts that you constantly have to work with and work on. And if you want to be an elite level, you have to have an eye to be meticulous to those little details.
And Corey, you're working in a high performance place where coaches want to be great, players want to be great, right? And that's awesome. You want that from everybody. But at the same time, that presents problems because not everybody gets what they want. Not everybody can achieve at that level. And you're dealing with insecurities, with egos, with goals and dreams. And, and I imagine those conversations have to happen quite often. But what are some keys to that? Like when you're trying to get a team that all wants, collectively to be great, but also individually they want to be great, because most really good players have that desire and have that drive, managing personalities, managing their goals and expectation. What are some best practices for that?
Mm-hmm. So as any leader, do you take the time to get to know everyone in your organization personally? And if you can't say yes to that, then you're not saying yes to really being elite. If you're picking and choosing, well, then you're going to have those areas where you're good at, and you're going to have those areas where you're not so good at. But every day, you should be identifying different individual keys that you can have stronger relationships. Leave yourself open also, where people can tell you certain things that you need to improve on as well. And so those individual relationships, situations, even if it's your equipment guy, a coach, we're running low on equipment. Take that as a big concern, as well as a coach, your best player is sick today. It's if you make everything a priority, you give people a sense of pride in what it is that they do. All right. For example, I'm coming down from being a head coach to an assistant coach, right? We want the organization to be, there are things that I do well, but I also know that I have a particular role that I have to play in order to make the organization work. Now, me dealing with my assistants when I was a head coach, I know there's particular things that each of my assistants do well. I'm talking to them about those things that they do well. I'm working on the things that they want to improve on as well in order to make the organization grow, because I want my assistant coaches to grow as well. If they grow, if they get better, if my support staff, if they grow, if they get better, if my administrators, if they grow and they get better, everyone is constantly getting better. But you have to have a mindset where every situation that you're dealing with is a priority, and you're not just putting things on the back burner. Now, with that being said, as a head coach, you also have to have people where you can delegate situations to, so they can carry the same message that you're carrying as well. So as a head coach, you can't get to every situation, but that that if one of your assistants, all right, what, he's good in this area, deal with John in that area. All right, my other assistant, what, go talk to the AD in this area. Go talk to the equipment manager in this area, and making sure that these people are reporting back to you, letting you know what's going on, so that everyone is getting the time that they deserve, that they need in order to make the organization grow. All right. If you have a part of your organization that's not growing, it's like a weed, and you're not tending to it. If you don't pull that weed out, it's going to destroy everything. So make sure that everyone that is in your program, they're a priority, they're important, and over for the overall organization.
And I would add to that, just for coaches listening, is you got to have a level of humility as a coach to say, hey, I may have a weakness. I need to hire my weakness, or I need to find a staff member who has a strength that covers up my weakness. But if I don't have the humility to think that I'm weak in an area, that won't happen, right? So that I do think that's an important note. Like there's got to be some humility to it.
Absolutely.
What's a mistake you've made in the past, Corey, in building a program that you think other coaches need to be aware of and get right?
You know what? As coaches, we're human beings. We have feelings. And I think sometimes you want to kill yourself every time something that doesn't go right, but you don't give yourself enough praise when you do things well. So it's like you're always trying, like, oh man, I'm killing myself. But you know what? You don't smell your roses enough as coaches. And in this business, it's like you're judged every single game that you play. That is your report card. So I think some of the mistakes that I make, and I still continue to make, I don't celebrate the wins enough, and I kill myself on the losses too much. And you got to find that balance. Even like in this world of the transfer portal. If I know that I come to work every day and I'm giving my absolute best every single day, you cannot control every situation. So you're going to lose some kids. You want to keep more of them that you lose. But the way that this basketball has changed since I was playing in the 90s up until now, it's a totally different world. So you have to be able to adapt to that world that you're in. And when you're adapting, you have to be able to adapt your mental state as well, and adapt your emotional state as well. But if you want to stay in this game long term, celebrate your wins. Don't be afraid to celebrate. Don't kill yourself on your losses. Take your losses as learning opportunities. So I think that I'm still working on some of those things that we struggle, because most coaches are perfectionists and they won't want to be perfect. Like I want to be 1,000-0. I'm a little short right now. So but celebrate the wins. On your way to 1,000.
Corey, let's talk leadership for a second. You just mentioned the transfer portal, and I think we're all dealing with that in college. And I think it's probably changed a bit from where, a player comes in, learns the rope, grows, becomes, older. Now you've got senior leadership. And, I think that's been fast forwarded, and we have to be a little bit more creative on how we develop leaders, how long they'll be a leader for us. And that can flux from each year, every couple of years. What are you thinking about? Because obviously you need good leaders on your team. What are you thinking about in developing leaders within the team and the program? How do you find who your leaders are? But how do you bring those to get the cream to rise to the top, to be having a voice as a leader? Just give us your thoughts on leadership within the program for players.
Yeah, leadership is very important, but leadership is very dynamic. You have so many different types of personalities, and so many different ways to lead. I think the best thing you can do is find out what type of leaders your players are. Everyone has some type of leadership program. For example, you look at Golden State. Who would you say is the leader of Golden State? The vocal leader. See, everyone says Draymond Green. Who's the best player? Steph. They lead in different ways. Steph is not the most vocal player, but Steph is very energetic. Steph is a killer. He's a silent killer, But I think Steph does more things off the court for his team and shows how much he cares. Whereas Draymond is just, he's out there. He's going to let it go. So you have such a high level organization in Golden State, but you have different types of leaders. Klay Thompson, when he was out, look at him, how he supported during his injury. He was constantly there. He was constantly working out. He was constantly rooting on his players. He was talking to the young guys. So within the dynamics of your team, find out what their personality style is. A lot of people just think that leadership is guys that they're vocal and that. No, you don't see the behind the scenes stuff. You don't see that guy talking one-on-one. You don't see that guy that comes to practice every single day and just gives it all, but probably doesn't say much. So within that dynamic, have that understanding of the type of personalities that your players have, and understand you as a leader. You have to have good vision to find out, because sometimes you can label guys the wrong way and say, oh, they're not a leader because they're not talking, or they talk too much, or, so just try to find what it is about your players, and then kind of push them to share more of their leadership style, but you should be developing leaders, not just one leader on your team, because everyone has something to give.
That's good. So, yeah, it's an awareness of your personalities. I'm hearing you say, I got to have some EQ, some emotional intelligence, understand who this guy is, and not try to mold him into a version that's not himself, but also like maybe stretch beyond himself, right, and become the best version of it. And that's a challenging thing, right? Like,
right.
Like, tell me about this. I want to ask you about adversity, but you saying that triggered this. I'll hear guys say a popular thing would be, well, I do me. I'm going to do me. Well, what if doing me, what if me isn't good enough? What if doing me is not the right? So how do you, on that same line there, when players, you want them to be their personality, Corey, but you also see an element of it that's just not good enough, or they need to stretch beyond that. So how do you massage that?
Right. And it's again, direct communication. Remember, there's certain things, like I told you, as a head coach, you have to confront things that you don't like. So even within that guy doing me, if doing you is either not enough or something that I don't like, we have to confront that situation and have clear communication on why it's not working. Why is doing me not working? Well, it's not doing you is not working because, number one, you're not the person next to you doesn't understand where you're coming from. So if you're going to be comfortable doing you, can you explain what doing you is to that person? So again, as a leader, or doing you is, it's not enough. And then when you say it's not enough, well, some coaches stop right there. What is not enough? What is more? So doing more is, there was a loose ball when we were watching film, you didn't dive on the ball. You're not playing hard enough. There was a step up where you didn't take a charge. You're not doing this. So again, don't have a player guessing. Tell them exactly what it is that not doing enough is, what doing more is. Doing you doesn't work because, and give them the factors of that. Now, once you display that, and I'm asking you to, now, if you're not doing that, that's when things get uncomfortable for you. It's going to get uncomfortable for you because, again, there's 1,000 ways to win, and this is the way that I'm choosing to play ball for us to win. So you have to get on board with that. And then now, if you don't get on board with that, then that's where the issue comes in. And remember, every player is not going to be able to play for every coach. It's just not going to be, So you have to be comfortable with that as well, But if you let things slide and say, well, his talent, what he's doing is helping me somewhat, well, then you're just going to win on an average basis also. I want to win at an elite basis, so I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm explaining to you. Are you going to do it? If not, well, have a seat, son, until you get it.
Yeah, I love, and I've shared this before, but what you're referencing there is the difference between coach talk and teacher talk. Coaches try harder, run faster, But teachers, you're talking in depth about like, no, specifically, I need you to know there needs to be, high clarity leads to high performance. And I think that's really important for coaches to take notice of, is because many times we leave it vague and we leave it gray. And I've heard you many times already in this time we've been together talk about how important clarity is. Curious, Corey, as to what have you found as good tools to develop culture and to develop leaders? Do you guys like using PowerPoints? Do you like showing clips of Draymond and Steph's leadership? Do you like putting them in small groups of 3, or do you like more individual talks? Is it group being together and go bowling? What do you think are some of the most effective things to actually build this kind of stuff into your program?
Right. Like everything you just said. So when we talk about improving a player's performance, individual instruction and improving their skill sets, when you're talking about building their mental state and their emotional bond with their players, going out and having dinner, or going out to a activity or a paintball or something like that. The one-on-one communication, when you're having honest communication, the honest communication collectively with the whole team, the entire staff, the players, and everyone being honest, and, going down the line, every coach having something to say, every staff member having something to say, every player having something to say. So all those things combined build your culture. It's not the how, it's the what. What's the message? So whether you're doing those things in the individual session, whether you're doing those things in the small groups, or you're doing those things in the collection, what is your what? What are you saying? Is it the same message constantly? If one of the players goes to me as an assistant, goes to the head coach, goes to the equipment manager, goes to the AD, if we all have the same message, that's culture. That is culture, and that culture is being clearly defined and clearly understood. If you go to 4 different people and you have 4 different messages, and someone's trying to downplay it, your culture is not strongly established. So no matter where you can, like we tell our players all the time, there's nowhere for you to hide. You can't hide. You can't go somewhere else and get that sympathy that you're looking for if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And then at the same time, when you need a pat on the back, yeah, we can do that for you also when you need that, But when you talk about building that culture, it's intrinsic. It's throughout your entire program, from the lowest person to the top, and it's the same message. That what is the same.
That's good. TJ says it's about his culture and his program. It's like a good culture is like a well-functioning family. And what is a well-functioning family? You have good times, you laugh, you enjoy each other. You also get mad at each other. You get frustrated. You might cry. You might bicker back and forth. So we sometimes build culture to be like living in this utopia world. In reality, right, there's a lot of stuff, but the ability is to work through the tough times, which gets me to this question to you. Let's talk about adversity. And you're a veteran coach. You've been in it for a long time, and been a head coach. And so here's the scenario. You got 2 players that aren't getting along with each other. It's starting to affect the rest of the team. They may be your 2 best players. They may be 2 starters, whatever it is. But in that scenario, when there's tension amongst players and they're not working it out on their own, you might be trying to see if they can do it on their own. What do you do now as a coach in that scenario?
Well, one of the biggest things that I said in the beginning was how you communicate, and things that you identify early, don't let them fester. If things are festering and you guys someone is turning a blind eye to it, that's when the problem gets too big. I've been married now 18 years. You think every day was utopia with my wife? You think every day is utopia with my kids? It's and that's family. Family, you have your problems. But if you're dedicated, if you're committed to your family, you're going to work those situations out. Sometimes my wife needs space. Sometimes my kids need space. But after that time is over, we're always going to come back and talk about what those issues are. Why? Because I care and I love you. And if I'm going to be around my team probably more than my family, You got to have a caring and a love for your team. And you can't love someone and let those issues go away. So we always talk about brotherhood and this is family and we love each other. Well, let's be true to that. There's nothing wrong with a family having a problem. I don't know a family that doesn't have a problem. If there's a family that doesn't have a problem, somebody's lying. You're a good secret keeper, But when you have those problems, give it some time, then approach it and deal with it. And even if it's uncomfortable, you have to be able to deal with it. And as the head coach, you have to see those situations. Talk to them individually, talk to them collectively, talk to them as a family, everyone talk. This is what we see. This is what's affecting us. And now if they really care about the organization, they care about the team, they're going to try to fix what it is, whatever problems that they have.
Corey, really quickly, let's just jump into two last things here. I want to ask you a little bit about player development and just a little bit about thoughts on like systems and strategies, things that you're seeing in the game offensively and defensively that you think are just really helpful. Coaches might want to take a look at or dive into it because you just think it's good basketball. But let's just start with the player development one first. When you guys are developing players and you're trying to put champions on the court, just go high level for a second. Like, what do you want to accomplish in your player development?
High level skill set, every position, high level skill set. No longer is it the big guys just going to post and we're just working 5 feet from the basket. No longer is it just the guards, working, 15 feet from the basket. It's high level skill development, all parts of your game, all three levels of scoring. And that's for bigs, guards, whatever. Whatever you want to name yourself. I'm not even sure if there are names anymore for basketball players. Because at the end of the day, you just want to be a basketball player. I don't care if you're 7'1". Can you dribble the ball? Can you shoot the ball? Can you pass the ball? Can you score the ball? And those are the skills that we are working on. And when you work on those things, if a 6'10" kid can get the ball and push it up the court and we can flood the court, that's better instead of that 6'10" kid get the ball and the point guard got to come back. Why can't you dribble? And if you think about basketball, think about every guard. How does every guard, however you want to see it, they always want to get the ball on the post and they have some type of coordination and footwork where in they're 6'1". Why is that? Because all their life they've been little guys and they've been dribbling, they've been working on their hand-eye coordination, their foot coordination, so they have a decent amount of post skills. Now you want to take it to another level, those guards got to do some post work as well. Well, our big guys, and Europe caught on to this faster, our big guys were always taught, go on the post, 2 dribbles, spin back, jump hook, mic and drill. As the game evolved, now these big guys are handling the ball, they're shooting the ball better, they're driving by, their coordination is much better. It's making the game so much faster, so much more elite, so much more skill. So when we're working on this stuff, we are working really on your ball handling. We're working on your shooting. We're working on your passing. We're working on how you score. We're working on your jab steps. We're working on how you come off screens. All these different things because it makes you more creative as a coach that you can do more when you have guys that are more skilled.
Yeah, that's really good. Let me ask you some systems and strategies really quickly. It's just out of the summer league and talking to some coaches out there in Vegas about patterns and just things they like to get out of their team in particular patterns. If we get it to the block, we want to get a 90-degree cutter and we want to get spaced out on the floor. Some people valued spacing and room to operate a little bit more. Like when you think about what y'all are trying to create in your program, what are some central points of what's going to make good offense for your team?
Yeah, well, you mentioned spacing. I think spacing is everything because there's so many different styles of defenses. How you're going to defend a hedge, are you going to ice the screen? You're going to hard hedge and different things. So creating spacing is very unique. Also, mismatches. We work so hard on development. If we see a guy that can't defend on a perimeter, he's a big guy. We want to be able to exploit that mismatch as well, where our big guys can actually take you off the dribble. Guards, we work hard in the weight room as well. We want to see if those guards aren't strong enough, we will post you up as well. So looking at mismatches is very key. Looking at spacing is very key. And then just different ways to attack ball screens. When you have a good mix of spacing, then you add a ball screen coverage into it. Again, you're looking for your opponent's weaknesses. So who is it that you want to attack on a ball screen? If we have good shooters, where do we want the ball screen to take place? Do we want it high up by half court? Do we want it low by the 3-point line so he's shot ready? So just different levels of where those ball screens are coming, spacing, matchups. That's what the game is basically about. Can you exploit
last thing
the other team's weaknesses? Can you find it quick and can you exploit it?
Just on the defensive end, I mean, you see a lot of teams playing pack line. You see people pressure, and you see some people that are 98% man and they don't play any. What have you found, or what do you think defensively? Like, what philosophy wise is mixing it up? Should we mix it up? Should we go with what we do best and do it all the time? Do we just tweak within our system and coverages? And what are you going to do, Seton Hall? What are you thinking defensively here?
Right. What is it? So when coaches ask me that, I always say, what is it that you're able to teach well? Like, don't just throw a defense out there and expect it to work if you can't teach it. What can you teach at an elite level? Do that and work on that. If you can teach multiple types of defense at an elite level, do it, because the drills and the time that it's going to take to teach it and to get it. And it'll also give you a timeline on when they're actually supposed to be getting it at the level that you expect it. There's some coaches that will throw 500 junk defense and they're all junk. There's some coaches that do just one thing and that's what they're going to hang their hat on. Boeheim's been playing the 2-3 zone forever, but that's what he does well, So whatever it is that you can teach at a high level, do it. I'm a fan of playing man to man, the majority of what we do, but you got to throw some curveballs. So there are some different types of matchup zones. There are some different types of zone presses. There are some different things of run and jump that I can teach, though. I stay away from things. If I see something that I like, I'm going to try to learn it until I understand it. I'm not teaching it until I totally understand it, because the players are going to have questions. And if you can't answer those questions, you're going to be doomed. That defense is not going to work. So whatever you teach at elite level, do it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think a lot of times coaches give up on it because they realize, gosh, I might not know this as good as I thought. And then you've ended up wasting a lot of practice time on something that could have gone to being great instead of just good at. And I think as coaches, that's one of the things that we struggle with most is time management. We mess that up probably as much as we do anything. We go down this rabbit trail because we thought we liked this, and then now all of a sudden, before you know, we've wasted 2 days of practice. And so I think coaches, it's really important to hear that is no matter what you do, if you could teach 100 things well, teach 100 things well. If you can teach 5 things well, teach 5 things well, but don't get caught up in that gray area of, well, I'm just going to go with 20 and half of them I'm going to teach well and half of them I'm not. I've made that mistake as a coach, myself. I think that's really good advice, Corey. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, Corey, look, you shared a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge with us today and covered a lot of topics. So we thank you. Where can coaches listening, if they want to connect with you and if you want them to connect with you, where would they be able to find you?
Yeah. Well, I have an Instagram, Coach C_Lowery. If you ever want to connect with me, go to Instagram. You can connect with me on Twitter as well. Same handle. A lot of coaches will DM me. And I'll do my best to get back to you.
Well, look, we appreciate you. Appreciate you, taking time out of your day to join us and help coaches get better. So that is TJ. I am Sam, and we are the Hardwood Hustle.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hardwood Hustle, where we believe in the value of a coach. We want to bring you quality content and journey with you. Stay connected with us on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us at Hardwood_Hustle. From the Hardwood Hustle team, thanks again. We can't wait to be with you again next week.